without understanding safety first, okay? Even though herbs are natural, there are some things that we need to know to make sure that we're using them safely and effectively. Hey, Tracy and Karen, welcome. So I first want to say that I'm starting to do these Facebook Lives, and I'm going to be consistent. Lee coming back every Tuesday at 10 a.m. And so what I'm going to do, because the poll inside of the group was kind of neck and neck with herbs and gardening, is I'm going to go ahead and alternate between herbal topics and gardening topics. So this week we're doing herbs, next week we'll do garden, the following week we'll get back to herbs, and so on. Okay? Oh, from Ontario, Canada. Welcome. Okay, so herbs are not only a fun hobby, but they're a really fantastic way to manage minor illnesses and injuries that we can have here at home and save ourselves a trip to the doctor. So how many of you guys have tried to make an appointment for a doctor for something that you needed to take care of that was pretty minor, and yeah, you have to wait about 3 weeks to get in? That's how it is with ours. And so to me, I feel like knowing herbal medicine, knowing how to use herbs in simple ways can save me that trouble of having to wait for the doctor and suffer in between with, you know, a minor infection or something like that. Or, you know, it'll help me to be able to just move on with my life, you know, without waiting. Hey, Bonnie. So it's really a great thing to know how to use herbs for some things like this that are minor and that can be taken care of at home. However, we want to know how to do it safely and effectively, and that's what this live today is all about. So let's go ahead and get started. So a lot of times when we are approaching herbs, we think that, you know, we ask maybe other people who have used herbs, other herbalists and things like that. We might ask them, like, what do you take for XYZ? So for a headache or whatever. So I think what happens with us, I know for me, what it is that we're still kind of moving along in that allopathic mindset. The mindset that we have learned to know, and you know, sometimes love too much, you know what I mean? But we just walk in this mindset that, you know, we have a headache, let's treat that symptom. Or I have migraines, so let's treat that symptom. And herbal medicine is a little bit different than allopathic. And so I'm going to use that word allopathic, and all that really means is over-the-counter or prescription medication that you can get. So, hey Sheila, how you doing? So here's the differences between the two. And there's a lot of differences, I'm sure, but here's some basic ones that will help you to kind of differentiate between the two. Allopathic medicine generally works faster, okay? It generally just treats the symptoms, and it also uses drugs and surgery to remedy medical issues. And so that's how that works. Nothing wrong with that. Herbal medicine, though, we want to understand that it works slower. It's more of a long game when we're going to use herbs. So it's not that you can't get some immediate help by using herbs, but what it is that herbal medicine is more of a whole body type of support versus just treating that symptom. You can treat your symptom, or treat isn't a good word. You can support your symptom, and I changed that there because there's certain wording that herbalists are supposed to use. Hey, Kathleen. And so we want to be on the up and up here, and we don't want to get in trouble with the FDA or anything like that. So if I correct myself, you'll know that's why. But at any rate, you can support your body and take care of the symptom at the same time, okay? Because herbal medicine uses a natural approach to some acute and chronic conditions. It's going to take a little bit longer. You'll have to take them for a while, you know, before you see, you know, any long-term kind of effect. But again, you can get help for your acute situations. And so there's that. I'm so glad you're here, Sheila. It is really nice to see you here. Okay, so before I go on, let me give you a little disclaimer. I'm not against doctors. Okay, and I'm not a doctor, so I can't give you medical advice, and I'm not telling you not to go to the doctor. Okay, that's not what this is about. What this is about is learning how to properly and safely use herbs for yourself for your minor issues and ailments that you want to take care of at home, like your cold, or if you get a cut, not a deep one, go get stitches for that. But you know, if you if you have an infection, a skin infection or something, and it's not like crazy, you just want to maybe put something on your skin that's going to help that, this is what this is for. Okay, please go to the doctor when you break your leg. Okay, herbs aren't going to help you with that necessarily. Okay, you're going to need to have something done for that. But for minor issues and illnesses, herbs are really excellent, and often they can be used alongside allopathic medicine very safely. Herbs are really safe. There's a long history with using herbs, especially lately. We've been seeing more and more studies about specific herbs and being able to help with certain things. And so these are all good things, and so these are all good reasons why we want to go ahead and try our hand at using herbs. It's not difficult, but when you have the rules, you're following the rules, you should be golden, really. So you want to start using herbs, right? So where can you obtain good quality herbs? So when we're new to herbs, probably most of the exposure that we've ever had to it are walking along the aisles of the grocery store, in the coffee aisle, where we see the big wall of herbal teas that are available to us there. And so a good way to kind of get to know your herbs and be able to figure out what different herbs do is, like, you can read the tea boxes. There's one out there. When I first started looking into herbal stuff, there was one out there by Celestial Seasonings called Tension Tamer. And so I loved that tea back then. And I don't think they make it anymore, or else I've never seen it available. But you can turn the box around and you can look at all the different herbs that are used for taming your tension, and so there's also another one out there called Smooth Move, which I think that one's for GI issues. And so you can turn that box around and read what kind of herbs are there. So while we have that kind of at our fingertips, I just want to share a couple things about using tea bags. Or using those herbal teas and what's inside of them. So when we go, I like to drink green tea, and so I've been drinking this lately. But recently I I'm going through an herbal course from my friend Heidi, who just finished writing her herbal course, or she's finishing it up now, called The Confident Herbalist. And one of the things that she mentions in there, in her tea section, is that the tea bags that are, around the herbs in our tea. Hey, Shauna. These tea bags may contain some things like plastic or PVC or something like that. I haven't done any personal research, so I can't really speak to that, but just letting you know, that is something that you might want to research if you care about that, because you might not want to pour hot water over this and drink it along with your herbs. So that's just something I wanted to throw out there. However, the emphasis on this, on maybe kind of going away from using tea when you're wanting to use herbs medicinally, is the fact that inside of the tea bags, usually you're having ground herbs in there. There's not often whole herbs in these. And it's probably a money thing, I don't know. But at any rate, when herbs are broken down that much, there's more surface area to oxidize and to diminish the shelf life and the potency. So if you're just gonna get your tea for enjoyment or whatever, and you don't mind about the tea bags, hey, go for it. All those teas, pretty much probably most of those teas have a really good flavor and whatever, so you can enjoy it that way. But if you're looking to use your herbs medicinally, what you want to do is you'll want to just be aware that the herbs in those tea bags are probably not going to be the most potent herbs that you can get. And especially if you're dealing with an acute or chronic condition that you want to deal with naturally, those teas are probably not going to be your best choice. So there's that. So if we can't just go grab it off the shelf at the grocery store, how do we get our good quality herbs? Okay, so what you'll want to do is you'll want to go to herb suppliers that have been suggested by other herbalists or people that have used their herbs. I use Amazon to get mine, and companies like Frontier Co-op and Star West Botanicals will sell, their 1 pound packages through Amazon at really good prices. And so those packages are like, they can range from this size, which is huge, to maybe this size of hawthorn berries. Oh, this one was nettle leaf. And so leaves are often usually a pretty big bag, and these are hawthorn berries. Elderberries are a pretty small bag or whatever. So you can get those through there if you think you're going to be using a whole pound. However, if you're new to herbs and you don't want to buy that much because it can get really expensive, especially when you're buying multiple herbs, you can head over to Star West Botanicals, Mountain Rose Herbs, or some other herb supplier, reputable herb supplier, to get smaller packages. And that's what I would suggest for anyone who's new to herbs. Otherwise, you're going to end up tincturing everything, to make it worth your while. So anyway, one time I ordered skullcap, and then I forgot I ordered it and ordered it again the next month, and I had these 2 humongous bags of skullcap. So this is the reason why I made that remark about tincturing, because I'm tincturing a whole bag of skullcap right now. And thankfully, tincture shelf life is pretty long, so I'm pretty sure I'll probably never have to buy it again. So that's good. Other suppliers, there are other suppliers on Amazon, and if you're not really familiar with how to tell whether or not your herbs are good quality or not, I'll share a couple things with you. So these are some herbs that I am actually drying right now. And this one's calendula, and you see how it's really vibrant still? The color's really vibrant. Here's another flower here. This is borage flower. I'm sorry, I hope you guys can still hear me. And it's still vibrant. Hey, Sue. And also, you can tell from the mint that I have here, it's still nice and green. This is the common mallow I have. But do you see how all the colors are still really vibrant? Okay? If you are familiar, this actually... I'm sorry about my dog, you guys. Excuse me for a moment. Excuse me, this is a daily thing that happens when we get deliveries. My dog is very excited about that. So anyway, if you're familiar with the plant that you are drying or the plant that you're ordering from a supplier, if you're already familiar with the fact that, or with the color, like I said with the calendula flowers, you know that they're a nice, vibrant yellow color. If your herbs are coming in that state where they're nice and vibrant still yet, you know that there's a lot of good energy still left in that herb. So if you buy your herbs and they are, they come to you in a kind of a brownish color state, and you know that that plant is nice and vibrant green, then you can know that this herb is probably not going to be the freshest herb that you could be using. And so that happened to me recently, and it was a real bummer because herbs can be really expensive. And so you just want to make sure that if you're going to a different supplier that's not been recommended by an herbalist that you know, or that you trust, then you probably want to make sure that you understand what the herb actually looks like when it's growing. Like, what is it? A nice vibrant green color? Does it have some yellows, purples, or whatever? If you get your herbs that way, then you know that they're pretty good. So the other thing that you can do to get your good quality herbs is to grow your own. So all the herbs that I showed you on this plate are ones that I grew here, and I am drying, and I'll be storing. Here are some chickweed leaves and yarrow leaf that I've got going. And you'll notice that I'm storing them in mason jars. And so I really like using mason jars to store my herbs. I don't really ever, even though these, sometimes the herbs come with a Ziploc on it. I don't really like to store them in there. I want to put them in glass jars. And the way I do that is I actually cut the label off and the expiration date, whatever they say the expiration date is. Hey, Donna. And I just tape them right onto my jar. And I try to use a new lid if I can. This one's a used lid, but you know, and sometimes I'll stick an oxygen absorber in there. And so that will help my herbs stay good as long as as long as I can. So as far as shelf lives go, in Rosemary Gladstar's Science and Art of Herbal Medicine, she recommends that leaves and flowers are good for up to a year, and roots and bark up to 2 to 3 years. And so if you're storing them properly, you're probably going to get that much mileage out of it. And so one thing she does mention, though, is that before you throw any herbs away, use your sight and smell. So if you open up your herbs and it smells like that herb, it's probably still good. It might have diminished potency, but generally speaking, you know, you can still probably use it. And also, again, you know, using your sight, you know, looking to see if the plant is still vibrant looking and not brown, you know. So just, you know, use your common sense there. And so, let's see. Oh, so once you fill up your jars, so I've got a bunch of these with my labels and everything like that. Put a tight-fitting lid, put an oxygen absorber in if you want to, and then store these in a cool, dry place. Does anyone have any questions or anything like that? I'm going to go on to talk about safe practices with herbs. So, and I'll grab questions whenever. There's like a 4-second or a few second delay here, so I won't get your questions right away, but I'll try to grab them, you know, in between. So, safe practices. Sometimes when people are starting to use herbs, they are concerned that they are going to hurt their family. You know, they don't know enough about it, so they don't know, you know, whether or not it's totally safe. Most herbs that you see in, say, your herbal tea aisle or whatever, these are safe herbs. You know, these are herbs that are safe to use as tea, and most of those ones, it seems like to me that they all are herbs that have actually been found in studies to help with, you know, respiratory issues or GI issues or something like that. Okay, but what we want to do is not necessarily rely on that knowledge, but we want to actually have our own knowledge that we can draw on in our own system for researching herbs to make sure to you know, that we're not having issues with contraindications or interactions. So Tracy's asking, is it better to store them in a cool, dry, dark room? I would think that you would want that, like the back of a cupboard or even just a cupboard that closes. Yes, a cool, dry, dark room would be good. So what are contraindications? Contraindications are just anything that suggests that you should not use a specific herb. So if you're pregnant, you know, there are certain herbs that are recommended not to be used during pregnancy. What are interactions? Interactions are a little bit different in that has to do with the fact that, or that has to do with whether or not you are using prescription medications or taking something, you know, regularly. So while most herbs are safe to use alongside of allopathic medicine, there are ways to find out whether or not, you know, the herbs that you're wanting to try are going to be safe for you to use. And the way I do that is I go to drugs.com, and I believe there's a lot of lists and things online that talk about herb to drug, interactions. But I like using drugs.com, where I can just uh, click on their interactions checker and plug, whatever the drug is, and cross-check it with whatever herb it is that I want to try. So here's a good example of when I use that for myself. A while back, if you read my blog at all, you'll know that I have issues with anxiety and depression. And at one time, I was actually on an antidepressant. So at that time, I was wanting to come off of the antidepressant, but I didn't want to have I want it to be smooth, and sometimes it's not. When people are getting off antidepressants, it's really difficult. So I wanted to make that easier for myself. And so I was doing some research into St. John's wort, and what I found out was that you really should not use St. John's wort, which is considered an herbal SSRI, with a prescription SSRI, because that can be cause issues for you in regards to serotonin syndrome, and that can be really difficult on a person, and dangerous. And so there are some herbs that you don't want to use alongside medications, and you just want to know what those are. Most are fine, but you just want to make sure to do that research. And so when we're talking about contraindications, drugs.com, and when we're talking about like herb to drug interactions, that's not the same thing as contraindications necessarily. Contraindications are more something that you're going to learn inside of your herb books when you're doing your research and things like that. Your herb books and encyclopedias will tell you, don't use this herb during pregnancy, or don't use this herb, during XYZ, whatever medical condition you might be experiencing. So just make sure that you understand the contraindications and the interactions if you are on any kind of prescription medication before you're using herbs. Okay? That's not meant to scare you guys. It's really, herbal medicine is really very gentle and safe, but there are things to know. And so there's no reason to be afraid. There's just reason to research, okay? So my suggestion is that until you are very, very familiar with whatever herb that you're using, go ahead and do, those checks just for good measure, okay? There are some herbs that are very toxic in high doses, and you should know what those are. I can put together some kind of a list for you guys if you want to know those things. And I don't have it off the top of my head, but one of them that is what's called a low-dose herb is Arnica montana. And so most of the time when Arnica is offered up as a herb to use for a specific situation, it's not usually used internally. It's usually more used in salves and things like that. And I believe that's because it's a low-dose herb and it just takes the danger out of using it. Okay, so there are others like that, but according to what I learned in Rosemary Gladstar's course, she was saying that most NSAFE herbs are not even really available to us to use, and that the government took all those off the market. I don't know what those are, and I haven't done any real deep research on that. However, I tend to believe what Rosemary says, because she's been doing this a very long time. And so, you probably don't need to worry too much about whether or not the herb that you're using is really dangerous or not. Here's a good example. Have you guys ever watched Dr. Quinn, Medicine Woman? So back when I was starting to get into herbs, I would always listen very closely to what herbs she was using, to help whatever her patients were ailing from. And so often for heart patients, she would talk about digitalis. And that's actually something that we can't use now. And it's really, really not even in any herb books. Probably the old school herb books from years and years ago, but it's not really in any of the new ones because it's not recommended to use, because it's hard to dose that just right so that it's not going to be, dangerous to a person. So that's an example of an herb that we no longer really use for specific situations. We use other herbs for those things, and of course go to the doctor. Always look up your herb in at least, whatever herb you want to begin using. Look it up in at least 3 books written by reputable herbalists who actually practice herbal medicine on themselves and on other people. That's going to be a really good jumping off point for your research. Just make sure that you do that, and I can give you a list of the books that I have and the books that Rosemary Gladstar has and other herbalists that I trust have offered, and then you can kind of start building your own library. And so that's always a really good idea. So at least 3 books written by a good, reputable herbalist. So does anyone have any questions? Because I feel like I flew through everything, and I'm hoping that these lives will only be about 30 minutes or so. We're coming up upon that right now. So anyway, go ahead and throw your questions out. And if I don't grab them and answer them right now, I will do that after the live. And thank you for watching. And remember that using herbs can be very safe and effective. We don't need to be afraid. Even if we want to use them alongside our allopathic medicine, if we do it correctly and we do our research and our due diligence, it's going to be okay, all right?